right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Pastor Tyler here. I know it's been a couple of days since our last video devotion. Because we've been taking some time just to kind of reflect and to figure out, now that worship is kind of back and into full order again on Sunday, kind of what's our next steps as far as these. We certainly do want to have an online presence for those of you that still want to stay where you are, that still want to just tune in from your phone. One of those things has been we're going to be recording the sermons from Sunday. Excuse me. We'll be recording the sermons. Wow. I promise you I'm okay. I promise you I'm okay. We're going to be recording the sermons on Sunday. We're going to be continuing to do these video devotions. However, we're not going to be doing them on Mondays. We're only going to be doing them on Wednesdays. And I'm probably going to take the lead on that. Every now and again, we might have a visitor, but for the most part, it'll just be me, just kind of reflecting on something during the week. Whether that's a verse that I've found to be formative in my study, or if it's something that is coming up, like for instance, this Sunday, we're talking about the Gospel of Matthew. We're going to be also kind of diving into a little bit of Romans. So, if there's something in there that, that I want to specifically don't want to maybe put in the Sunday sermon, but want to talk about here, this is going to be kind of my outlet for that, to share kind of more insights as we go throughout the week. Kind of our plan as we're looking at getting back into a regular routine, whether that's, which includes having regular meal times with one another, but also having Bible study in the same way that we have been. So what that's going to look like is right now, Deacon Tim is having Friday night Bible study with the men. Last week, I believe he had 5. And then Pastor Hill and I are going to be conducting Sunday worship. And then we're going to slowly, maybe even as early as next week or the week after, probably the week after, we're going to start to have, a Wednesday Bible study time. And then, just kind of slowly get back into that groove. Obviously, you all know how unique we are, and we crave being able to do that with you. So this is just going to be kind of a filler for then. So today we're going to be actually in Psalm 100. And the reason I chose Psalm 100 is it's very simple. It's the appointed psalm for this Sunday. So we're going to be reading it together on Sunday. But I also, many of you all know Miss Pam, used to come down at Family of God all the time, and she recently got married, and I had the privilege of marrying her and Dave. Beautiful scenery up north, and one of the things that she wanted to be read was Psalm 100 at her ceremony. So I just think it's really cool. It's a wonderful psalm. It's a short psalm, and it's full of praise for one simple reason, which we're going to get into in a minute. So Psalm 100, I'm going to read this for you now. David writes, "Make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come into his presence with singing. Know that the Lord, he is God. It is he who made us, and we are his. We are his people, and the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving, and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him, and bless his name. For the Lord is good, and his steadfast love endures forever, and his faithfulness to all generations." I just want to pause for a second, and I love this part here. At the very end, his steadfast love endures forever, and his faithfulness to all generations. And certainly we know this to be true, right? We know this to be, we say this a lot. God is providing for us. God, I sometimes I ask people, how you're doing, and say, I'm blessed, right? And we know this because God has promised us that his faithfulness and his love truly endures forever. And it doesn't matter if we're gathering in corporate worship. It doesn't matter if if we're at home watching, a worship service on our computer screens, on our TV screens, God is still present. God is here. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if we haven't had the sacrament, and we got to celebrate that this Sunday, and it was so wonderful to have that sacrament. But just because we haven't been receiving the sacrament does not mean that God's love and God's forgiveness and God's mercy and grace has passed away, because it says it endures forever. And we take the sacrament because we know of the benefits and the forgiveness that it provides for us, and the strengthening of our faith. But that's not the only place that God shows up, that God promises to show up. It's one of the places that God shows up, and it's one of the places that He promises to give us that. But He also gives it to us through spoken word, and He gives it to us in baptism. So these promises of God's love enduring forever, David kind of puts that exclamation mark on the end of his psalm here. But what he begins with when he says, "Make a joyful noise to the earth," all the earth. So he says, "Make a joyful noise to all the earth, and serve the Lord with gladness, and come into His presence with singing." What a beautiful picture that is, and it's exactly why we sing in church, right? It's why when we have so many folks singing together a hymn of praise, why it's so beautiful. I'll never forget, there was one time when we were at the old building on Sharon Street, and we had that old boom box, and it was very old, and the discs, the CDs that we had to play music, those were a little bit scratched, and we had been having some issues with it before, and we were singing "White as Snow," and a song that all of us know probably by heart by now. And we were singing that song, and all of a sudden you just heard, and then it stopped. The music stopped, but the voices did not stop singing. That is one of the most beautiful memories that I have in my time at Family of God, because 50 people in a small room continued to sing, "Though my sins were as scarlet, you have made me white as snow." And it was like an a cappella singing. And there was so much joy and so much love and so much thankfulness in those words. So when we say, "Make a joyful noise," it doesn't have to be in tune, right? My mom used to always tell me, I don't need to sing on key. God always says, make a joyful noise, right? We serve the Lord with gladness, and we come into His presence with singing when we gather together. Know that the Lord, He is God. It is He who made us, right? We know that God is the creator. This is the first article of the Apostles' Creed, where we say, "I believe in God the Father, maker of heaven and earth. Know the Lord, that He is God. It is He that made us, and we are His. We are His people." And I love this, and this hopefully sparks some memories for you. The sheep of His pasture. This should immediately direct you to another psalm, Psalm 23. Right, where we read that Jesus is the good shepherd, and we read that the Lord is my shepherd; I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters. Right, these are the things that God does for us. He provides for us. He cares for us. He says we are His people, and the reason that we can call out to Him, the reason that we can make this joyful noise, the reason that we know that His steadfast love endures forever, is because we are His people. We are His people. And then verse 4, "Enter His gates with thanksgiving and His courts with praise. Give thanks to Him and bless His name." Now, certainly this looks at for us currently as we enter into the sanctuary of God, but it's also pointing us to what is to come when Christ comes back. And I'm drawn to Malachi. I'm sorry, not Malachi. Micah chapter 4. And let me pull that up for you. I've got my Bible out here. If you want to go to Micah as well, Micah chapter 1. I'm sorry, Micah chapter 4, verse 1. The prophet Micah is talking about the mountain of the Lord. Okay, so Micah chapter 4 verse 1 says this: "It shall come to pass in the latter days." Okay, so these are in the coming days when Christ comes back, the day of judgment, the day of the day that Christ comes back to make everything absolutely perfect. Okay, the day that we're all looking forward to, right? That the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established as the highest mountains, and it shall be lifted up above the hills, and people shall flow to it. And many nations come to say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. So, when David, let me go back to Psalm 100 here. When David talks about entering the courts, entering his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise, he's not only referring to the moment where we get to enter into our sanctuaries here, but he's also talking about, okay, there's going to come that day when Christ comes back that we are going to enter. We're going to go to the house of the Lord, the new heaven and the new earth, the new Jerusalem that God has made and prepared and has restored for us. And we're going to be singing and we're going to be rejoicing. We're going to be worshiping. And to me, that's an incredibly comfortable thought. An incredibly comfortable thought. And then, of course, we get to that end that we just talked about before. The Lord is good and his steadfast love endures forever. Because we know that all of this, all of the things that God is doing, all of the things that David is expressing here in Psalm 100, it all comes out of his steadfast love for us, which endures forever, and his faithfulness, which is throughout all generations. I pray that you you're encouraged by this, because I know for me, my encouragement from this is that it doesn't matter where we are, it doesn't matter our race, it doesn't matter our identity. The identity that matters is that we have been claimed by Christ, that God has taken on your sins in the form of his Son, Jesus, has gone to the cross, has taken that punishment for you, and he has given his life for you. And it's through him that we have the forgiveness of sins. And because of that forgiveness, because God has marked us as his own in baptism, we get to sing. We get to serve with gladness. We get to anticipate the day that Christ comes back and makes all things new. As we kind of wrap up here, a brief announcement here. I'm going to put a picture here on the screen. Pastor Hill and I are going to be, this is not going to be the only source of media that you guys will have access to. Pastor Hill and I are going to, we mentioned a couple Sundays ago that we're going to be dabbling in the podcast game, and really excited for that. We're going to be calling it Jesus, Dietrich, and Me. Many of you may not know Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a famous German theologian who played a key role in helping to get Hitler out of Nazi Germany. He has a whole ton of awesome ideas. I mean, even as he was being executed for his faith, he was preaching the gospel to the men that were carrying him to be executed. And he was witnessing to them. He was praying for them. He was praying all the time. He was in prison. He wrote all kinds of letters. The guy's a stud, and Pastor Hill really enjoys him. He got me hooked on him. We read a couple books together, written by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. So we're going to be calling this podcast Jesus, Dietrich, and Me. And what we're going to be doing is looking at specific quotes from Dietrich Bonhoeffer, relating that to our theology today and what we know as Lutherans and as Christians. And then we're going to be making that into a social commentary on the things that are going on. We're going to be making our first recording tomorrow, and then hopefully once I can figure out how to edit and cut all that fun stuff, hopefully by early next week, we'll be able to direct you all to where you can find that. And then we encourage your feedback. If it's something that you all like, if it's something that you continue to listen to, we'll continue to talk about it. But it's something that we want to continue to do. We want to continue to have an online presence. We've been very excited about the reactions that we've had from our online presence since the coronavirus quarantine, and we want to keep that up. So, last thing before I let everybody go today, we are back at worship. So you are welcome to join us. We would love to see you. We're going to be celebrating the sacrament, singing, being together Sundays at 3 o'clock at Family of God. socially distant, of course. So we look forward to seeing you there. If you have any comments, any prayer requests, please make a note in the comment box here. And we'll look forward to seeing you all soon. Have a great Wednesday, everybody. God bless you all.